right, let's talk about the yamas. I want to talk a little bit about why I interpret the yamas the way that I do. So, as we have learned throughout this course, and as you may have learned in the past while studying the sutras, this idea of Kriya Yoga gives us yoga as a path of action. And when yoga is a path of action, that means that as yogis, we choose in each and every moment to take intentional action. When the yamas and the niyamas are interpreted as nonviolence or non-stealing, and you have these negative words in front of the idea that these yamas and niyamas are presenting to us, it almost inspires non-action, or it teaches us to not do something instead of doing something. And it's really more of a language presentation than it is an actual meaning. But I think that that does change how people interact with these ideas. So our yamas are these principles or universal disciplines, is how I interpret them, that help us live in relationship with the world around us, with others. And in that sense, these disciplines are very important because to live in the world means that you are living in relationship with others. That is with your family and your friends and your students and your neighbors, your community, your country. And we all have to live with others in the world. So how do we go about being in relationship with other people? Well, Patanjali suggests that we cultivate these disciplines to help us navigate relationship, which in and of itself is complex. It's hard to be in relationship. It's not, cut and dry, black and white. It's very nuanced. So how can we help ourselves when engaging in relationship with the world around us? So Sutra 230 introduces us to the yamas. There are 5 universal disciplines you must cultivate to succeed in interacting with the world around you. And what does Patanjali mean by success here, or succeeding in relationship? I think he really means that to use relationship as a path of yoga, we must cultivate these 5 universal disciplines. So what are they? 1, compassion, ahimsa. 2, truth, satya. 3, giving, asteya. 4, moderation, brahmacharya. And 5, abundance, aparigraha. So, nonviolence is what you would most often see when someone's translating the word ahimsa. I translate it as compassion. Satya, truth, mostly the same. Giving, for asteya, which you would normally see translated as non-stealing. Brahmacharya, sometimes translated as celibacy. More modern interpretations and translations often use this term moderation. I prefer that term. And then abundance, aparigraha, we're normally seeing translations that say non-hoarding. We're going to then go through each of these individual disciplines. Before we get there, Patanjali reminds us in Sutra 231, practicing these 5 universal disciplines applies to everyone, regardless of your class, doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter the situation that you're in, or what is happening at your life in any given moment. I think that this is really important to remember, and that's why these disciplines are universal. And it might be helpful to understand some of the context, again, in which the Yoga Sutra was written. Way back when, thousands of years ago, when this text was written around Patanjali's time, yoga was very much existing within the Indian caste system. And many of the people who had access to this wisdom and these teachings were people who were of the higher castes, so that anyone born into lower castes might not have easy access to these practices or this knowledge. But what Patanjali is suggesting here is that these practices and this knowledge and samadhi or freedom isn't something that only exists for people that are luckily born into these higher castes. It doesn't matter how much money you have. We should still practice specifically these 5 universal disciplines, but also we have access to this freedom that the entire Yoga Sutra is offering us. We have the ability to have and recognize the liberation that our true self and connection with our true self brings us, regardless of your job title or any of these circumstances that you might find yourself in. And that's really reaffirming and really freeing. And that's what makes yoga so accessible as well, which I think is really important to remember, especially in the times that we find ourselves in now, in which this accessibility of yoga is coming up a lot. It's almost a buzzword these days in the industry. But, you know, we do see in a lot of cases yoga being reserved for the white, thin, bendy woman who has access to wealth and money and can pay for the yoga pants and the yoga mat and the gear and the classes. And it's important to remember that these principles exist beyond all of that gear and all of the prices behind classes and any of that. And Patanjali tells us that in the Yoga Sutra, and I think that that is so profound.